So you talk a lot about some of the problems that we face. What can we do? And let's start with diet first of all. And you talked about the Candida diet. Can you describe what that is and maybe how you came across that in your research?
Well, in my own journey, I had multiple sclerosis at 24. It knocked me flat. And I had dealt severely with an intense case of Candida at 18 when I had Epstein-Barr. And when I look back, I probably think at 18 is when I had my first MS episode. But I was the poster child for Candida. I had over 100 antibiotics in my lifetime. I was a sugar addict. I had 16 silver amalgam fillings. And I was type A, so I had all the factors going on for me. And it caught up to me very quickly. And so going through that journey, because literally I had seen 8 different specialists, I was on more than 30 different medications, and I was dying at 18. And this book named, The Yeast Connection by Dr. William Crook fell in my lap, and I took this questionnaire, and it was like, do you have this, do you have that, brain fog, are you tired? And I started crying, and I was like, oh my God, this is what's going on with me, when everybody was saying it's in your head, or we don't know what's wrong with you. And I followed this program of literally a year of having, no alcohol. And at that time I was 18, so I don't think I was drinking. And no sugars, and no dairy, and at that time no wheat or white flour. Now I'm more strict about gluten. So I cleaned up my diet, and I took an antifungal drug called nystatin. At that time it was actually Nilstead. I was taking the powder. And for a year I did this regime, and I felt better. And so that was my first awareness into what Candida was. It was amazing to me as far as what my body and the changes went through, and it really began my journey. Now, unfortunately, I didn't know if you don't keep yeast levels in check, they come back even more virulent. And I went back to my crazy ways, and at 24 it knocked me flat, and then I stepped into multiple sclerosis. And so that was 4 years of a very tumultuous journey of surviving a near-death experience, a suicide attempt. It was very intense. But the wisdom I gained from that was incredible, because one is the body's the most amazing organism I know of. Science will never catch up to it. The second thing is it taught me that I was to be a healer and do this work that I do now. And it was key that I learned that these infections, such as Candida, were primary in most every condition that I would see in my practice. And so the first step is looking at what you eat. And I'll say to you, start slowly. I mean, I have a book that's a 90-day program, and I tell people either do the slow start, or if you have that kind of discipline, get right into it. But sugar is probably the very first thing you need to eliminate. It's the most destructive chemical we ever invented. It feeds everything. It weakens an immune system. I mean, I can go on and on about sugar. So if you can pull the liquid sugar, which is the alcohol, and the refined sugars, that's a very good start. And if you just do that, you're going to start to feel shifts and changes in the body. You go further, you start to remove the dairy products. They're very inflammatory, very congesting, particularly for asthma, sinus, ear, any upper respiratory issues, also GI. And then you've got the gluten. Gluten is a huge issue today. And that's because I think we've changed the strains of what we're dealing with. It's not the same seeds that we had maybe 30 years ago. They're now genetically modified. So the gluten is very inflammatory. It disrupts the villi in the intestinal tract and allows leaky gut for these things to get out into the system. So food allergens start to appear, and Candida overgrowth and parasites, etc. And then you've got the trans fats and all the miscellaneous stuff, caffeine, fermented foods. All of these things can aggravate the condition. So you got to clean up the diet first, and you either can be more aggressive or slowly work into that.
In your book, you have a list of foods not to eat, which is long. I mean, you have to be pretty strict if you're going to do this. But there's a lot of fruits on there too, and I think automatically think that any fruit or vegetable for that matter is good. Can you talk about some of those fruits and vegetables
Sure.
and why they should not be part of your diet?
Well, fruits in general, I do restrict quite a bit, but I allow some. And there's also some discrepancy in the Candida world about having no fruit at all and some. And I think it depends on the chemistry. Sometimes I have to tighten it up. But the fact is, if you're taking the big bullet points out of, intense like a donut and a soda pop that's got 28 grams of sugar compared to what you would get in a green apple. So the glycemic index is much lower. So you can get away with things like, well, avocado and lemons and limes are not going to do much to your sugar levels. So I find that the berries are very low in sugar levels and green apples, and I allow some grapefruit. So very limited quantity, and I find that if I can at least give them something, almost from every food group, then it keeps people in there. And the reality is, for most people, they're only doing this for 90 days. And you're not just getting a gut cleaned out, you're literally taking years of your history of removing infection inflammation, because my program is more comprehensive. I'm not just getting rid of Candida. So the fact is, 90 days goes by like that, and then hopefully you'll educate yourself and learn a new balance. Because one of the things people don't understand is about food sensitivities. Your body wants to tell you everything that you're sensitive to, but you desensitized way back when, because you're either doing the same food every day, every other day, or every third day. So you could have pizza on Monday, not know why you had more constipation on Wednesday. You could have a glass of wine on Sunday, not know why you had a migraine on Tuesday. It's delayed. But let's say you do the Candida protocol for 3 weeks, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to have a piece of chocolate. You will be the first one to know instantly what do you feel or within 24 hours. So what I love about this process of cleaning out is that you become educated, and you start to discover, because everybody has about 3 to 4 trigger foods that really set their body off. And I'm hoping that people then do that in very small quantities or not at all. But what I love is the education process, because we're so not tuned into our body and what it's saying to us. So
Isn't us educating ourselves a big part of it, instead of just going to the doctor, getting a quick fix? If we could just be more educated about, what we should do to our own bodies, obviously we'd be a lot healthier.
you nailed it. I mean, education is the key, and that's really my mission from here on out, is to educate people. Because if you educate them and you give them more choices, they become empowered. Those choices then are followed up with more diligence, and you watch change happen. And that's really why I love the work I do, because I don't have the constitution to be an oncologist. I have to see enough success. I have to see enough win. I have to see people get their life back. And I see it all the time. And it really comes down to, I wish I had this education when I was younger. I wish my mother had that education. She was working hard to put food on the table, and I was the processed food generation. I ate, things out of a can. We were Italian, so guess what a meal was on the weekend? It was pasta, so it was more gluten and white flour, and I was a sugar addict. So I would have liked to have known those things. And I really do think that we're not getting the proper education about what to do. And simple things. It doesn't mean you're never going to enjoy those moments of having a glass of wine or having a piece of cake. It's just we don't know what moderation needs to be in this day and age, and that's what we need to discover. So first is to learn about nutrition, learn about the body, get excited that it can heal. We're kind of brainwashed with all the advertising that you're going to have to take a pill for everything you have. Where do we go off on that? The fact is, the body knows how to heal. If you cut your finger, do you really think about it healing? No. Why would it be different in any part of the other body? It's not. It's just sometimes you have to give it more time because it's more complex. So education is the key to, I think, personal freedom and health.
Talk about your education a little bit too. And you said in between your Candida issue and multiple sclerosis, you had a lapse in there. Talk about the two periods in your life, and after you got through multiple sclerosis, what had you learned that you maybe didn't the first time around?
That I was indestructible, that I thought I could just go and have my ways, and I figured out something, and it was like taking a magic bullet pill, meaning, even though it was a year of doing a program, in a lot of ways I just felt like, okay, I'm normal now and I can go back. And part of, I don't know if it was in Dr. Crook's book, but what I missed out on is how I had to keep that balance, because I was more susceptible based on a lot of my history. I wasn't the average person because I really did abuse the sugar, and I really did have so many antibiotics in my lifetime. So, the key was I became so, at MS-24, and I could barely, walk, breathe, swallow, move. I mean, that's a whole different ball game. So I would have eaten dirt at that time, and I pretty much did, because health food stores had very limited supply. So the wisdom was a deeper understanding of really what chronic disease was and all the factors, and really the patience and time involved in it. Because people will come to see me with something chronic and they expect the same thing as they do in Western medicine. They think one herb is going to take care of this. Or if I do a Candida diet for 30 days, that's it, I should be able to walk. And I'm like, no, I'd like to say that you can, but this is 10 to 15 years in the making. So, what I learned most was the layers of how we're multifaceted, because I had a lot of emotional dynamics too from my childhood. And I realized how much stress played such a huge part in my overall health. And so I became keenly sharp to almost every factor that breaks the body down, and then I was able to apply that into my practice. And I think that gives me unique insight to getting people well because I connect with them on all levels, not just what is your symptom.